everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Mixtape Podcast. Today we have with us Umaid Wasim. He is a sports journalist whose key two sports that he mostly focuses on is football and golf. Hello and welcome, Umaid.
Hi, Fatma. Thank you for having me.
The key reason for me to invite you to this podcast is uh, generally whenever we somebody thinks of some discussion around sports, the first thing that comes to mind is in Pakistani audience mind is obviously cricket. We are a cricket crazy nation, but there are other sports as well that I think we people do watch it. People have an interest in it, but unfortunately, we don't have a large scale sports structure around them to promote our local players. Recently, because Olympics are on these days, and till this point, I think Talha is still trending because of the same reason. Somebody
Yeah.
who has like so much potential, but obviously there wasn't a lot of support behind him. So the sport that we are going to be talking about today, which is football, uh, sees a similar fate. I know somebody who has a personal interest in the game. I watch it, I watch club games, but one of the key reasons is for this that we don't have a national team or players at that level that we can sort of get a lot more emotionally invested in this game. Whenever there's FIFA, specifically in Karachi, ka jo Liari wala area, we see there are actually news reports done where we see, these flags of different national teams, but unfortunately, there's no Pakistani flag there. So, given that this is something a sport that you cover in depth, can you just share where does Pakistani football stand right now?
Well, to be really honest, we stand nowhere in terms of the global game, and it's a shame because we have a lot of players, we have a lot of interest as well, and yet we we don't really we like minnows. You can call us super minnows because we never won a World Cup qualifier in history. It's a sad whole history of Pakistan football. There have been some high points in the 60s and 70s, but otherwise, I mean, we're like one of the worst struggling nations in the world. And as we speak right now, we are suspended by FIFA um, because of third party interference into the affairs of the Pakistan Football Federation. And there's a lot of turmoil in the Pakistan Football Federation for the last 6, 7 years, which is now resulted us being banned for the second time um, during that period. So it's like it's a very bad state of the game if you would like to sum it up. And the problems are at every level. It's it's from the PFF down to the people who organize tournaments. The very fact that we love to see the global game, but we still still living in the 50s and 60s when it comes to game development. It's we're living in very ancient times as with regards to football because the game has progressed in the whole world, and we've just not been able to catch up with it, which is why we keep lagging behind. Like every 1 year, we fall 5 years behind. So that's the whole difference.
That's obviously you have just opened up with, you've summed it up well, and it's a pretty sad situation. So I just want to sort of dissect a few key sections of this entire situation. And as I said previously as well, that other than cricket, we don't really see a lot of investment going in any other sport when it comes to, investing in players, the training, and, sort of keeping up with the international trends. So, and we were also obviously going to talk about the FIFA ban, but you have mentioned it, so I would just like to cover it first. What does, because you said there's third party uh, involvement, can you just explain it for a layman, what a bit more in bit more detail what that means, and also what does that mean for Pakistan's football future, and specifically not just obviously the game, as we really, our team doesn't really stand anywhere, but individual players, from, be it from the female players camp or the male players camp, we see a few individual highlights, people who are doing something on their own and get recognized internationally because they end up playing for some international club at some level. So this ban, what does it mean for the players in general?
Well, basically, let's just start why we are banned because uh, now you see, the PFF. It was formed in 1948. It's one of the founding members of the Asian Football Confederation, and since it was formed, it has been a member of FIFA as well. Since 2003, the PFF had just one president, and that was Faisal Saleh. And during his time at the helm, a lot of irregularities and um, there were a lot of funds coming from FIFA which were not being utilized well. And because it's so political, it's about world football and FIFA and the AFC. It's like another level, and it's all about power and money. FIFA is all about power and money. It's if I put it very simply, uh, anyone who would want to people want to be the president of the PFF because it's all about that power and money. So you can understand that why people hang on to their seats and like they cling on very tightly and they don't want to let go. But so in 2015, when the PFF elections were being held, there was a big dispute in the PFF, which resulted in the PFF uh, splitting into two factions. What happened then was that there was a PFF that was recognized by the government. There was a PFF recognized by FIFA, which was the one led by Faisal Saleh. So it went on till 2019 until FIFA decided that the PFF needed a normalization committee, which would basically hold fresh elections of the PFF and basically solve all those matters. Um, the uh, the PFF at that point was one that was led by Faisal Saleh and another that was elected by the Supreme Court, which saw Ashfaq Hussain Shah become the president of the PFF. So, like after 18 months, and Ashfaq Hussain Shah says that the normalization committee didn't do anything. He decided it was time he'd take over the house, and subsequently, that takeover saw Pakistan being banned by FIFA. So that's where the third party involvement or interference comes from. Hello?
Yeah, yeah. So I'm
Yeah.
like, I was just thinking, yes, a general term is used that, wherever there'll be more than two individuals, some form of politics will be there. But I think uh, this is a trend that we see across the board, not just in sports, but in other fields and industries as well, that the power dynamics and the politics of it sort of ruins the whole structure of things. Obviously, politics happens in other countries as well, in every field, but I think we sort of, our priorities sort of, we lose the sight of what really matters in the situation. So you have very well explained what this entire fiasco is. So now what does this mean for our players, Pakistani players? Obviously, both in terms of the fact where does uh, the national team, whatever form, in whichever form it exists, stands, and also if individual players want to sort of, do get involved in the club matches or games, because at the national level there is no team, we don't have that club sports system in the country. So individually, if they want to participate, does this entire thing impact them?
Well, basically, the national team can't play during the ban. It's suspended from all Asian Football Confederation tournaments or FIFA tournaments. So internationally, Pakistan does not exist at this point in time. The players, yes, they can play for their clubs. There's no restriction on that. But that is an entirely different matter because if the clubs actually want these players, Pakistan has had some great, not great, good talents that have come up in the last few years. You know, we've seen Kalimullah, we've seen Mohammad Adil, we've seen Saadullah. There are a couple of players, male players, and then you've got Hajra Khan in women, Shalaila Baloch, who unfortunately died in a car crash. She was one of the rising stars, and so we've got players coming up. Um,
Mhm.
One of the problems in their growth is that the fact that the domestic competition here isn't that good. That's why they never really get a chance to play at a higher level. Because in the end, what happens is they can only move to a league or a club which is slightly better in a country which is slightly better. But seeing them play, like for example, in English Premier League or Spain's La Liga or Bundesliga, I mean that's not going to happen very soon. It's unless and until we develop our football system and and basically use the modern football techniques, it's not going to happen. So yeah, the players are losing out, yes, because the national team isn't playing. So that's a big loss for them because that actually gives them a chance to show these clubs that yeah, they we can perform and we can perform at a higher level. But otherwise, I mean, if you look at the domestic football system, it's outdated. We still have departments. There's no uh, club culture. So there are a lot of factors why football is where it is.
So we were talking about players and the fact that they can only, even if those who try to get into the clubs outside Pakistan, there too, because of their performance level, there are limitations despite individual talent. So my next I think question from this conversation would be that in your when you have been covering the sport, um, and I'm going to assume that you have sort of interacted with a few players. How do you see their personal motivation and the fact that obviously, because there's no real scope or future where if somebody is interested in the game and they want to sort of do it professionally, and there's literally no system, how can the younger players, not the ones who are currently already in the system, they might have sort of figured out some way to sort of make their financial thing work out along with their passion for the game. But when there is literally no structure, how do you get those younger players who want to get into this thing, because they see international players and how they are recognized, and those who have talent get to make it big? What is their motivation level, and if they still want to do it, how do they go around the system?
Well, international football is a bridge too far for us right now. I mean, right now, what we can realistically aspire is to compete at the South Asian level at this point in time, and then probably move up to the Asian level, and then I mean, it's like it's going to be a stepwise thing, and it's not going to happen overnight. It's going to take time. For the young players that are coming up, I mean, right now there is little incentive, but the players that are already there, the players who actually show that they're good enough, are usually snapped up by departments. So that gives them a sense of financial security because they're employed by departments. Most of them have permanent contracts and stuff. So there is a financial security. But yes, of course, if the players think about being at the level of Cristiano Ronaldo or Lionel Messi, Paul Pogba for that matter, I mean, it's not that easy because these players, the world class players that we see, are in a system, in a football system from when they're 6 years old, 5 years old, 7 years old. We don't have that system in Pakistan, and we won't have that system in Pakistan for the next decade, I think, unless there's a big transformation in the PFF and there's a focus on grassroots and developing talent. Because right now, talent only gets you this far, but it's a lot of hard work, uh, a lot of the other aspects like training, nutrition. So the players that we see at the top level are really athletes who develop and sink in that. So I mean, for a youngster who has a lot of talent, uh, but doesn't have the opportunity, that talent won't take him or her that far. It demands a lot of work, a lot of coaching, and a lot of areas that need working on to make a complete player. So unfortunately, we don't have a system in Pakistan. So yeah, it is demoralizing for any youngster who wants to come into football and play at a higher level. And that too representing Pakistan. We see some players who were born abroad, like you've seen Zidane Iqbal, who was in the Manchester United academy and just made the first team, I think. So there are players who've been developed in a system, but I don't see personally a player who's born in Pakistan and training here making that big. No, I mean it requires a whole rejig of the system, the way we train players, the way coaching is done, because international football and football in Pakistan are like on completely different wavelengths. It's uh, we, catching up with that. It's going to take us a lot of time and a lot of effort and a lot of money. And uh, frankly, right now, I don't see anyone who's actually willing to invest that much in Pakistan football.
Yeah, you rightly pointed out that there's a we sort of we are lagging behind, not just by a few years, but I think by decades in the entire in terms of the entire technique or all the development that has happened in the game. Uh, but from somebody who knows the game, has covered it, and somebody who is like a fan of the sport. Uh, for example, if you need to like suggest even the baby steps that need to be taken, that I'm not saying that major changes that will sort of, as you said, it's not going to happen in a day, but what are the baby steps that the PFA needs to take right now to fix their house in order, so that things can start progressing in the right direction.
First of all, we need a PFF which has football people in it rather than politicians and people who don't know jack about football. We need people who understand the modern game, people who actually know what it takes to make a system. We need a good technical director. We had a good one who just left, Danny Limenez, and he left because of the PFF turmoil. So that's the first step. And then we need academies. PFF had 8 gold projects from FIFA. None of them were completed. And I always think if they'd been completed, we would have been in a different state right now in terms of football. So we need academies. We need to we need age groups, and we need to sort out the best talent. We need to nurture that talent. It has to be done um, very properly and very meticulously. We need good coaches, um, coaches who know the modern methods, and coaches who are not outdated in terms of their philosophies. We need a footballing philosophy, an identity in which we train our players in certain ways. And then, of course, we need a club system. We need to form clubs in the country and make them financially viable. Um, I am personally very much against the franchise league for football because that's no way you're going to develop football. It's a very short term measure, franchise league, because a lot of people talk about holding a franchise league with football on similar lines to the Pakistan Super League in cricket. Um, that is no way you develop talent. You need clubs who have age group teams, and it has to be a whole system that works in sync from the PFF down to the clubs to the grassroots. And to have that system in place is going to take a lot of effort, and it needs people who understand football at the helm of the PFF.
These are, I think, quite rightly the first. The you need to build a foundation to be able to sort of create a strong structure. I think it applies across the board. Um, we really don't see a lot of, I don't think, because as you have pointed out, there is not a lot of you know proper statistics or data collected about the game anyways. So just, do you know, even uh, from our historic time when the game was actually flourishing at some level, are there any sort of milestones or any achievements that you can share with us, that some games that we won or some players that were really respected or recognized as good players at maybe at the Asian level or at international level?
We had good players at that point. We have good players at this point as well. I mean, at that point, we had Abdul Ghafoor Majna, who was the Pakistani player. He was very famous in the whole of South Asia. We had Ali Nawaz, who was a legendary striker. He was very good. We had Mohammad Isa, uh, who was very good. Right now, we have Kalimullah, who who I feel if he had proper opportunities, he would have grown into a bigger star than what he currently is. So I mean, we had at that point teams from Russia, Iran, Turkey even coming to Pakistan, and we got good results against them. Right now, if you look at Iran, uh, you can't compete against them. If you look at Turkey, you can't compete against them. Not even like they won't even play a match against you because you're not at that level anymore. But at one point you were at the same level, or maybe higher. But right now, if you look at the top tier teams in Asia, like Japan, South Korea, Iran, Australia, um, if even if you ask them to play against you, they won't play against you because simply you're not at that level. So I mean, we've fallen pretty far behind, and it's a shame because from what I've seen and what I've covered, people really love football, and
Yeah.
it's it's a game that for me it's always I look at football from all many different angles. Um, Football is a game that can create social change, unlike any other sport,
Yeah.
and uh, it's a way of expressing yourself. And no other sport. Like a lot of people ask me that why I don't like cricket, and I always say that I don't like cricket because it can never cause social change. it's not it's an elite sport.
Yeah.
It's a game of the elites. It's played in just the countries in which the British once ruled. It's a Commonwealth sport, and it's in a way to. I mean, you can say that cricket was introduced to the subcontinent in order to like
Yeah.
limit people rather than giving them a chance to express themselves. Now, football, on the other hand, is a game that comes naturally to us. Uh, so, I mean, that's why I feel very sad when I see the current state of football in Pakistan. And I hope and I really pray at times that maybe one day I can see Pakistan doing well at some level because unfortunately we won the South Asian Games, but that doesn't matter that much because it's the SAF Championship
Yeah.
that is like the best tournament in South Asia.
Mhm.
And unfortunately, you see India sending a B team and still winning it and being not able to compete again. So that's just in terms of how we've fallen behind India as well. Because they can win a SAF Cup with their B team and we can't win it with our A team. So that's the sad part.
Yeah, it's a pretty overall sort of gloomy situation. But as you rightly pointed out, football is a game that sort of is. I think there are a lot of documentaries from Latin America to. It has a political expression to it as well, be it at club level or at when national teams play against each other. So yeah, it's a very interesting and passionate game, and it's really sad that we don't get to be a part of that environment. But we're going to try and somehow figure out a way to end this conversation on a positive note. So, can you share like some interesting experience that you had covering these event anywhere? It could be some international game as well, and some interesting maybe interaction with some players or with crowd or anything that you would like to share.
I've been very lucky actually. I mean, I've been able to cover two World Cups in Brazil and Russia, and Champions League final Milan and Cardiff. I mean, for me, I mean, I've had a lot of good moments. I interviewed Martin Tyler, the famous commentator, and everyone recognizes his voice. And he told me in 2014 that the world is waiting for Pakistan to come up. So unfortunately, we've not been able to do that. Uh, I've had very good interviews. I mean, I interviewed Paul Pogba after the World Cup final. I interviewed N'Golo Kante after the World Cup final in France had won. So those were great moments. And I mean, seeing Messi and Ronaldo play in front of my eyes was an amazing experience. And I mean, that's what I hope, one day for me. I've been to two World Cups and I've never had a chance to cover the national team at a World Cup. I mean, my dream would be to see Pakistan playing at a World Cup, I mean, and covering that World Cup because I mean that's going to be like the it's something that's on top of my wish list because it's like the World Cup really uh, is a tournament for the whole world and it has the best teams in the world. And it's an amazing journey for the teams that actually make it to the world. Uh, so it's like I mean, if you go to a World Cup, you qualify for a World Cup, it gives you such a feel good factor. I saw Iceland at the first World Cup, and the crowd, the passion, the fan following was amazing. So I mean, those are the stories you want to follow. I mean, if Pakistan were to like go through the whole qualifying for a World Cup and eventually reach the World Cup. I mean, it's not about winning the World Cup; it's just about reaching the World Cup.
Yeah.
So that's just like, and that's an amazing journey, and a journey I want to cover. Unfortunately, we always get knocked out in the first round. So you really don't see us playing those matches, those big matches against the big teams. If we go past the first round, we might end up playing Japan or South Korea or Iran or Saudi Arabia or Uzbekistan, like the top teams in Asia. And just that feeling for me is going to like be the completion of my journey as a football journalist to see Pakistan doing well in World Cup qualifying.
Well, I personally hope that that comes true for you, and we do get to see a team, because I think for our generation, getting to see Ronaldo and Messi play in front of you, I think that's one of the biggest bucket list that you have done, and hopefully you will one day get to tell the story of the Pakistani team qualifying for the World Cup. Hopefully in our lifetime. Um, on this note, thank you for your time, and hopefully, I would like to have you back someday. Maybe we'll discuss some other sport, or hopefully, we'll see some change, even if it's a minor change in the right direction for our football federation.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Hafiz.
That is